Ban assault weapons, ban them again, do it now. Enough, do something. And these merchants of death are breaking the law for profit. They're selling guns that are killing innocent people. We're not going to be quiet until we get it done. It's time again to ban assault weapons, high-capacity magazines.
Guns don't kill people. People kill people. Criminals, miscreants will always get their hands on guns.
Rep. Jared Golden calls for ban. Well, folks, buckle up, because we've got quite the political roller coaster here. Rep. Jared Golden, a Democrat hailing from the great state of Maine, has thrown a curveball that could make even the most seasoned political pundits do a double take. Picture this. A mass slaying rocks his very own hometown of Lewiston, and it's a nightmare scenario that no one should ever have to experience. At least 18 lives were tragically cut short. In the face of such a heart-wrenching event, Golden has had a change of heart, one that could change the course of his political journey. You see, the good congressman used to be on the other side of the aisle when it came to attack weapons. He wasn't exactly the poster child for gun control, but then came that fateful day when his own community felt the shockwaves of a horrific mass slaying. It's a moment that can make anyone reassess their convictions. Golden stood up, cleared his throat, and in a moment of genuine reflection and perhaps regret, he said, "I'm sorry." Yep, you heard it right, folks. He apologized for his past stance, and then he dropped a political shocker. He's all in for an attack weapons ban. He wants Congress, the big league of American lawmaking, to step up to the plate and swing for the fences. Why? Well, it's because he wants to protect his community. It's that simple. He wants to keep his neighbors, friends, and family safe.
That you said that all assault weapons should be banned. Is that a fair statement?
An escalation in violence perpetrated with guns, particularly among our young people, in a manner that I have never seen before.
Criminals will always find guns.
Absolutely.
And it is the cities with the most restrictive gun policies in the country where
The incident in Lewiston made him realize that the world can be a dangerous place, and even if he once had doubts about banning attack rifles, he's not taking any chances anymore. So there you have it, a change of heart, an apology, and a call to action. Golden is now on the side of those advocating for stricter gun control, especially when it comes to attack weapons. In the wake of tragedy, he's decided to make a stand, and it's one that's turning heads and making waves in the world of politics. Let's see where this new path leads him and what kind of impact it might have on the ongoing gun control debate in the U.S. Biden's stance. Well, we all know President Joe Biden isn't one to mince words, and when it comes to gun violence in the United States, he's not shying away from the tough questions. So here's the deal. Right after that horrendous mass slaying in Lewiston, Maine, where 18 lives were lost, President Biden stepped up to the mic and did what he does best. He spoke his mind. He looked straight at the nation and asked a question that has been on the minds of many. Who the hell needs an attack weapon that can hold, in some cases, up to 100 rounds? It's a question that strikes at the heart of the gun control debate. He's got a point, right?
Defund the police, and then they want to take our Second Amendment right to defend ourselves.
The Second Amendment, from the day it was passed, limited the type of people who could own a gun and what type of weapon you could own. Announced the creation of the first ever White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention.
But it didn't stop at just the question. President Biden, in his signature style, took to X to rally congressional Republicans. He called on them to fulfill their obligation to keep Americans safe. That's a pretty direct plea, especially when you consider the staggering toll gun violence takes in the country. Now, this isn't the president's first rodeo when it comes to pushing for an attack weapons ban. He's been on this wagon for a while. He's talked about it on the 10th anniversary of the Sandy Hook tragedy, and again after a mass slaying in Nashville, Tennessee. He's not just talking the talk, he's walking the walk. But, as you can imagine, not everyone is on board with the attack weapons ban. In fact, there's some pretty fierce opposition coming from congressional Republicans and some influential gun advocacy groups, with the National Rifle Association leading the charge.
That men and women in this country have the right to defend their own lives.
Second Amendment protects firearms in common use at the time and also said this, quote, for lawful purposes like self-defense.
guns don't kill people. People kill people. Criminals, miscreants will always get their hands on guns.
So you've got President Biden out there trying to make change, asking the tough questions, and pushing for stricter gun control. But he's facing an uphill battle, a wall of resistance that's been built over the years. It's a classic showdown of principles and politics, and it's a fight that's far from over. The question remains, will President Biden's calls for an attack weapons ban gain enough traction to make a difference, or will they get caught in the crossfire of a deeply divided nation? We'll have to wait and see. Senator Susan Collins stands. Let's talk about Senator Susan Collins, shall we? She's a well-known figure in the world of American politics, hailing from the great state of Maine. Now, when it comes to the topic of gun control, she's not quite singing the same tune as Jared Golden or President Biden.
But, Madam Speaker, guns have been prevalent in the United States of America since before our founding.
A critical and urgent issue, gun violence in America. We're here because gun violence is destroying communities.
I think you need to have weapons to take on the government. You need F-15s and maybe some nuclear weapons.
So, after that tragic mass slaying in Lewiston, you might expect her to follow suit and support an attack weapons ban, right? Well, not exactly. Senator Collins has a different approach. She's not jumping on the attack weapons ban bandwagon. Instead, she's advocating for something else, banning very high-capacity mags. You see, she's not alone in this stance. She's got company, and it's none other than her fellow Maine Senator Angus King. They both stand united in opposing a full-blown attack weapons ban. And if you think about it, it's quite a strategic move, considering that over a dozen states have already banned high-capacity mags. Now, here's the deal.
After every mass shooting, we hear a simple message. The same message all over the country. I've been to every mass shooting. Do something.
If you were serious, you would acknowledge that 96% of mass public shootings happen in an area where guns are banned.
Supporting the National Organization Women's Legal Defense Fund. I didn't know.
This debate is not just about the specifics of gun control. It's also a glaring spotlight on the resistance within the Republican Party when it comes to gun control measures. The GOP has long been divided on this issue, and it's one of those political hot potatoes that keeps getting tossed around. Senator Collins' stance reflects the broader challenge in American politics. How do you find common ground on an issue as divisive as gun control? It's not easy. The nation is polarized, and the gun control debate is a prime example of that division. So while Senator Collins and Senator King may be in agreement on high-capacity mags, the broader conversation around gun control remains as contentious as ever. It's a debate that's unlikely to end anytime soon, with both sides of the aisle holding their ground on their respective positions. The question is, can they find middle ground in the midst of heavy GOP pushback, or will it remain one of those issues that's stuck in political limbo? Only time will tell. Efforts for gun control face resistance. President Biden, as you know, is no stranger to the fight for stricter regulations. In the aftermath of the Lewiston mass slaying, he calls for an attack weapons ban. But here's the kicker. Despite his impassioned pleas and those of many gun control advocates, the path to change remains paved with resistance.
Seizure of weapons from the homes of law-abiding American citizens.
But at the crux of this is a bureaucrat making a unilateral decision to try to turn millions of Americans into felons.
Partisans at the ATF have really run amok, infringing and trampling on the Second Amendment.
Who's leading the charge against these gun control efforts, you ask? Well, it's no secret that congressional Republicans and influential organizations like the National Rifle Association are standing in the way. The NRA, with its deep pockets and vocal support, has been a long-standing opponent of any significant gun control measures. They argue that the right to bear arms is sacrosanct and that any limitations infringe upon that hallowed freedom. But it's not just about the NRA and Republicans. The resistance goes even deeper. Some right-wing lawmakers are proposing a different approach, focusing on legislation addressing mental health issues and stricter limits on gun access for individuals deemed dangerous. It's a compelling alternative, and it's got its own set of supporters who argue that mental health and safety should be at the forefront of the conversation.
90% of illegal guns were found at the crime scenes, sold by 5% dealers. Banned assault weapons and multiple magazines. We're going to do it again.
Under the new rule, firearm owners will be required to obtain special registration, surrender or destroy their brace.
What's particularly disheartening is that despite President Biden's efforts, several state-level initiatives aimed at limiting gun access have fallen flat. In some cases, they've been deemed unconstitutional by the courts. This adds yet another layer of complexity to the already steep uphill battle faced by gun control advocates. Background and challenges. Once upon a time, from 1994 to 2004, the U.S. had a federal ban on attack weapons. Back in those days, a young senator named Joe Biden was an advocate for the ban, supporting it during his tenure in the Senate. But like all good stories, this one had a twist. The ban expired and was not renewed. The sun set on that chapter of gun control history. Fast forward to the present, and efforts to bring back the attack weapons ban have hit a brick wall. It's not for lack of trying, mind you. Advocates have been pushing for it, but there's been strong opposition from right-wing lawmakers.
Percentage of the shootings were done by semi-automatic weapons or rifles. The number one weapon that they use, basic pistol.
There should be an assault weapons ban. I think it would have been up to the Ohio legislature.
They were and shot by someone and couldn't defend themselves because their guns were taken from them.
Who believe any such ban infringes upon the Second Amendment rights of citizens. And not to forget the elephant in the room, the National Rifle Association, a lobbying powerhouse that has consistently opposed these bans. The closest we came to reinstating the ban was when the Democratic-held House passed a ban on attack weapons, but it had more exceptions than your average rule. Things like grandfathered rifles, hunting rifles, and weapons for law enforcement officers were given a free pass. Even so, the bill faced insurmountable odds in the Senate, where it needed 10 Republican votes to pass. Unfortunately, those votes never materialized. But let's not forget that there are other paths to gun control that have seen some success. Background checks for young gun buyers and red flag laws, which allow firearms to be temporarily confiscated from individuals deemed a threat, have made headway.
Today, the department is announcing, as it just did, a major crackdown on stem the flow of guns used to commit violent crime. You want to be here to promote the change, but it brings back all the memories as if it happened a day ago.
Most significant federal gun restrictions in decades on Friday following years of false starts and failures to tighten gun laws.
And let's not overlook the efforts to address mental health issues and enhance school security in response to tragic mass slayings. These measures have garnered bipartisan support. In the midst of all this, one striking figure stands out: the financial impact of AR-15 style weapon sales in the United States. It's staggering, with over $1 billion in revenue generated by U.S. gun manufacturers between 2011 and 2021. It's a stark reminder of the economic interests tied to the gun industry. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.